but we're not. As people who want to be right there, we are the eyes of history, and we take that job very seriously. It's a privilege, and we're grateful to be in that front row and to have that access and to have his phone number and to be able to have these conversations. And I think that whatever he had planned to say, he said, the next time we do it, it's going to be a show of love. And we all went through that together, too, and he noted that. He noted how incredible it was that people of all different sort of political stripes, because it wasn't just a room of journalists and lawmakers. There were all sorts of guests there. But in that moment, we were all human beings experiencing that together. And I thought that it was important that he noted that and reminded people to hold on to our humanity.
Not sure I believe that he's going to go easier the next time out, but we'll take his word for it. Very quickly, what are you most thankful for? You've had a little time to step back and sort of process what happened last night. What are you most thankful for tonight?
Primarily Secret Service. I think that if we all had to go through something like that, the fact that we are all able to talk about it today and go home and hug our loved ones is a testament to the fact that they have that muscle memory, they go through that training, and they snap into action without a moment's hesitation. I'm thankful to everyone in that room who, in the moment, looked out for each other, and being able to come home and hug my fiance and call my mom and let everyone know who was watching and was concerned, let them know that I am all right. It's meaningful when you are able to make contact with people who love you, and we were able to do that because of the law enforcement response. And I'm grateful to them, and I'm grateful to God that I do feel that there is someone looking over you when things could go a different way and they don't.
Certainly. Well, Jackie, we really appreciate you taking the time. I know it's been a long 24 hours for you, but we appreciate all of your coverage. And again, you looked beautiful last night. We hope that you can join us again in a ball gown and beautiful earrings. But thank you so much.
Maybe not the same one. I think that dress is going to retire.
Dress. So maybe that's the silver lining. Jackie Heinrich, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. So what makes President Trump so special is that he does get out there and throw the barbs with the best of them in a very aggressive and, like she said, hyperbolic way. But I also grew up watching WWE, so I grew up watching some of those characters and understanding they had a role to play. And the entertainer in President Trump understands that. He's willing to take the political collateral at home, taking barbs with reporters if he needs to get a message out to China or to Iran or to Russia, positive or negative. He's willing to take the criticism and the hurt feelings here because he needs to do that to keep our country in a place of strength, and we've seen that over the last few months. The reason why I bring that up is when you do see the softer side, it hits even more authentic, more genuine, because it's such a contrast to what you see often enough. And I think that the nuance of President Trump is what makes the regular American connect with him, because he doesn't play by some set of rules where you pretend to be the choir boy even though you're doing terrible things, or where you pretend to hate everything about everyone all the time, and even though you're having dinner with the other party over here. When he is in the mood to trade barbs, he will. And when he's in the mood to be just a regular human being who can get along with somebody, empathize for somebody, he does that. So it's always genuine, even if it changes. And that's why people connect with him, because I do that. I get on it, man. I'm ready to go be a different person. I'm going to change my habits and be better. And 6 months later, something happens that reminds me, I've let it go and I bring it back. We saw it after what happened in Pennsylvania. We saw that side of him. Okay, he's been attacked for a long time now, and you see it come back out. It's not less genuine than it was the last time. It's just things have changed overnight again.
It's more authentic, I think. Lisa, I want to talk about some of the other attendees. We're getting a lot of footage on cell phone footage from last night, and journalists' first instinct, I guess, is to pull out the cell phone and to record, and so we have a lot of images from last night. Something I was really struck by, and actually brought a tear to my eye, is the number of folks who were shielding others. Particularly, I saw a lot of footage of Stephen Miller shielding his pregnant wife. I saw our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, hovering over, his table. And those images, to me, I'm actually getting chills talking about them, because it's just kind of, even in the face of what could have been a disastrous, horrific, deadly event, you see some of these individuals and their natural instinct is to protect. What did you make of those scenes?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more on that, Tommy, because there's so many people out there who see something like this happening and they assume they know how they would behave. But you don't know until you're in that moment, and it was heartening to see these men reaching over to protect their wives, their loved ones. It was something. I appreciated it. Yeah.
Recommend Realtor.com.
Hi, Peekaboo.
So you know when to make your
Yes, you beautiful little boy. Yes, you are. Oh, Peekaboo. Daddy loves you.
Concerned about your heart?
Yes, he does.
6-link EKG is better than 1.
Mommy loves you too.
Do that?
I know, Dad.
6L Max. The personal EKG.
Part of a group called the White Awakes and had attended a No Kings protest. Now the White House is revealing that Allen kept a manifesto.
The guy is a sick guy. When you read his manifesto, he hates Christians. That's one thing for sure. He hates Christians.
For more, we're joined by former FBI Special Agent Nicole Parker. Nicole, thank you so much for being here. I want to start off with something that you actually did a special with Sean Hannity about radicalization. What patterns do you see here when what little that we know about this person so far? What catches your attention?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's such an important case and investigation to be looking at because unfortunately we are seeing this pattern over and over in our country, and this political violence, it must stop. But in order to stop it, you've got to know what's causing it so that we can try to do our best to prevent it in the future. Of course, evil cannot always be controlled, but we will do the best that we can to study this. And this individual, again, will be facing the full extent of a strong prosecution, and he will be facing the law, and he will have his day in court. So, as you mentioned, I had the honor of working on a special for Fox Nation called Radicalized. And I was delving into different male shooters and what were the patterns that we saw across many of them. And so, just in this particular instance, what we know so far, obviously, it's very premature. The investigation is ongoing. But one thing that I want to start with, video games. This individual was a very smart person. Okay, he went to Caltech. He studied mechanical engineering. He went on to get a computer science master's, very, very bright. And he started by designing shooter video games. Okay, so he was just designing them. And I'm sure in that, situation, he was also playing the video games. At the FBI, believe it or not, that's something that we look very closely at in some of these young men is what is their online video game activity? Because a lot of times they have this fantasy of not just acting out what they're seeing on the screen, but actually living it and becoming those quote-unquote heroes in real life. And so in this instance, they will be looking at, he designed video games, he probably played them. Did he ever have an idea that he wanted to live it out? Because he actually did become a shooter in real life. Obviously, the FBI will be looking very closely at his online activity, and we're noticing a pattern over and over of these echo chambers. I could say that I read the manifesto. There were certain things, it was almost verbatim things that I have seen online. The verbiage is almost exactly the same thing that I have read over and over online from online posts and social media. That's something that they will be looking at very closely in the radicalization process.
Cole, Kevin Cork with you. Always great to have your analysis. I understand that among the first things that we would anticipate in an investigation like this is the collection of, generally speaking, comms, cell phone records, posts, etc. But walk me through what they might be looking for inside the home, inside the abode of the accused.
Right, so that's very important. They're going to, obviously, they executed a search warrant at the home. They have a search warrant that identifies from a judge exactly what you can take. And when you go into that home and you have an attachment, what we call, and it says, this is what you can take, this is where we expect to find it, and then you leave a property receipt and you tell them everything that I took. And that's when the FBI takes the evidence, they take it back to the office, and that's when we start doing things like mirroring and imaging phones through our CART computer analysis response team. These are the types of things that we're going to look for very closely: tablets, phones, laptops, any sort of devices that we can capture communications. They're going to be looking also through social media. Anything where he was talking to people, texting with individuals, who was he calling, who are the contacts in his phone, and what was the activity going back and forth. In addition, they'll be looking at his financial status. Where was he spending money? Where was he, purchasing those guns, those firearms, the knives, the ammunition? When was he doing that? When was he booking the travel? When did he book that train ticket to go through Chicago to DC? When was he booking the hotel? All of that is usually captured through email, text messages, and other, electronic and digital devices.
Certainly. Nicole, I want to ask you about how we weigh the First Amendment and your right to go on social media and say disgusting things, with the security implications of that. I know they'll comb over this individual's social media. We already know, some of the posts and rhetoric that he has used. You mentioned the manifesto itself. But when it comes to social media activity and people putting things out there, publishing for the world to see, their hate, how does the FBI balance your First Amendment rights with the security concerns of potentially an individual like this?
That is an excellent question, and it is a very fine line, because people do have a First Amendment right, and I'll tell you that there's things that I see that are absolutely abhorrent and despicable, and I'm thinking, how is that even legal for them to say that? But they do have that constitutional right. But the moment that it turns into violence, and you're inciting violence, and promoting violence, and arranging violence, it's over. That's no longer your constitutional First Amendment right. That's inappropriate, it is illegal, and you can expect to see charges for that.
Amen.
Nicole, real quick, this group, I can't come up with a name right now. It's Awake.
Wide Awake.
Wide Awake. Have you ever heard of them before? Do you know anything about them? Is it a group that you've come across your radar before?
I am not familiar with them. No, I am not.
The Wide Awakes.
Well, Nicole Parker, thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming on with your expertise. We have so many more questions, but we don't have that much time. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Cole.
Hi, yeah, so we've been out here all day. I can tell you we've seen FBI officials out here on the street of the alleged gunman going door to door, checking with neighbors. I heard one of them saying that they were looking for Ring camera video. So, they're doing their due diligence, being very meticulous about this investigation. I also talked to a number of neighbors out here, and they tell me they are just completely shocked by what happened. They heard about this shooting that happened, there in the lobby of that hotel, but did not expect for the alleged shooter to be living here in their neighborhood. So they are coming to terms with that. What we know about the suspect, 31 years old, identified as Cole Allen, lives here in Torrance, here in LA County, about 20 miles southwest of downtown LA. Has a very extensive background, educational background, was big into tech, graduated from Caltech, studied mechanical engineering, and yet his life is going to take a dramatic turn if he is found guilty of the charges he will likely be facing. Again, authorities say that he caught a train, took a train from LA to Chicago, and then from Chicago to DC to carry out this attack. And so fortunately no one was seriously injured, but again, authorities really working hard, investigating what led up to this incident.
Christina, I know his parents, I believe, have talked to investigators at some level. He also has a brother and I believe a sister, at least what we've seen. Do you know if the family or he have, got a lawyer that's out front saying, hey, we'll put out a statement or anything of that nature yet?
I have not seen that so far. I will say, our Matt Fenn, with his incredible and great reporting, he says that the parents are cooperating. We do believe that they lived here in this home with Cole Allen. Also, White House officials, they say that several of his family members have talked to authorities, including his brother, who said that Allen had an alleged manifesto that he had sent to family members. So apparently the brother said that after the incident last night. Then also the sister, she talked to authorities, and she said that he would make some comments, some rhetoric alluding to needing to fix the issues that are occurring here today. So whatever that means. Also, the White House saying that he was in a group called the Wide Awakes. I went to the group's website. The group describes itself as an open source network who radically reimagines the future through creative collaboration. So I'm sure investigators are going to be looking into all of that. Back to you.
Christina Coleman, thank you so much. Kevin, to a certain extent, kind of empathize with the overall fact that this happened, because we don't want to see anyone's life ruined. But I think that's colored by the fact he didn't have a chance to do what he was there to do. And ultimately, from what we know, he had weapons and he was there to use them. Matter of fact, he shot some rounds off.
He had two firearms and knives as well, so he was very determined, and also, in his manifesto, knocking the security that he saw there at the hotel. he wasn't just a teacher, he was teacher of the year for C2 for this place. He tutored high school students.
Amazing.
And that was December of 2024. So that's less than a year and a half ago, right? What happened in January of 2025? The President of the United States was inaugurated in January of 2025. What happened in that time frame from teacher of the year to what happened last night?
Yeah, that is the question. Hopefully we'll get that answer. All right, up next, Outkick founder Clay Travis was inside the hotel when the shooting happened. He's here to tell us what he saw. There he is.
It was a very chaotic scene inside the White House Correspondents' Dinner after shots rang out last night. Outkick founder Clay Travis was inside the Washington Hilton when it all went down, and he joins us now to fill us in on how things unfolded. All right, Clay, take us into that room. What was the experience like for you?
Initially, Tommy, it was awesome. I was excited. My wife was dressed up. I thought she looked great. I looked decent, at least for me. Everybody was, it seemed like, in a pretty good mood. And then there was a sudden, sort of clatter, and you could see the Secret Service swarming. And initially, I thought, okay, this is probably just a protester, which I kind of halfway expected. Somebody would stand up and scream something. And then I heard what I'm pretty clear was a pop, pop, pop that sounded like gunshots. And then a lot of people ducked. My wife was next to me. She was on the ground. I climbed on top of her. And we were near the front of the stage. And to the right side, I could see the guys with long guns. And they weren't standing with the long guns by their side. They were up and they were swiveling around the room. So at that point in time, I didn't know. I knew there had been gunshots fired that I had heard, but I wasn't sure whether they were inside the ballroom or somewhere else. And I will say also, Tommy, we were sitting with Mark Wayne Mullen, who was at our table, the head of DHS, and the Secret Service came and swarmed and took so many of the Trump administration's top personnel and got them out of the room. And so there was a great deal of chaos associated with that. Agents jumping across tables, tons of different, as you would imagine, dishes, glasses shattering, hitting the floor, which also added to the overall chaos. Eventually there was this form of stability and everybody kind of set up, and then we waited because the initial reports were that President Trump was going to come back in, and a lot of people didn't have great cell phone service, so we were trying to figure out what exactly had happened. Sometimes, when you're actually at the event, you can have less of an ability to follow the news story than people who are remote and able to cover it. I thought Fox News did a great job, went back and watched a lot of that coverage, and got pretty much every fact right.
Great to have you with us, my friend. I'm just curious because I've been in that room many, many times, and I've always felt like, Clay, that the tables are, you're packed in there. You are about as sardined as you could possibly get in a large space. I'm just curious, when everything was going down, were you able to move around? I know that they got Mark Wayne Mullen and all the other principals out of there, but I'm imagining that you guys were probably pressed between tables and chairs.
Yeah, you could barely move even when you're sitting eating at a normal event. It was absolutely packed, and I think that's some of the chaos that ensued, Kevin, was the amount of plates hitting the ground. Remember, there's also people serving, and they're panicked. They don't know exactly what's going on, so you've got dishes hitting the ground. You've got all sorts of sort of just a cacophony of noise coming from everywhere, and that aided all of the challenge. The other thing was, you may ask about this later, but I should say, I am so incredibly thankful that this shooting and this attempt happened after everybody was already in the ballroom, because you had to go through a metal detector in order to get into the ballroom. You did not have to go through a metal detector at all to be at the media parties, which were taking place in the hotel, to get into the hotel, obviously, as we now see with the guy who had the guns. But if he had come out an hour earlier, there could have been dozens, hundreds of people harmed. And if there had been multiple guys like him, this was a security potential disaster. I actually feel like we got off comparatively easy.
Yeah. Clay, that kind of brings me to my next question. On one side, the cat's out of the bag. Everyone knows how this event, where it was unsecure before, so it can't be that way. It can't be done that way again because now we've talked about it for 24 hours. On the other side, the video we have of him charging through where the metal detectors are, that area, I imagine, is a choke point where everyone had to go through. We can't see anywhere but that video. Can you paint a picture or tell us, was it pretty well fortified? Were there a lot of agents? Were there long gun agents there? Like, when you went through those metal detectors and finally into the ballroom, did you feel like that choke point was well secured?
You're a sports fan. I felt, and I thought about this after, and I know Bill Malugin shared his thoughts. It's harder to get into a football or basketball game or a baseball game than it was to me to get into the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And as we were going through, I thought to myself, this doesn't feel particularly secure. You got the president, vice president, secretary of state, secretary of war. I mean, this is the speaker of the House, everybody all in one room. And I remember thinking as we were going through, the fact that so many people were in that hotel, either staying in the hotel or just going to parties that didn't actually have tickets to the Correspondents' Dinner at all. So it did not feel like a particularly secure place. Again, the easy analogy that I would draw is it's often tougher to get into a stadium than it was to get into the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
Hi, Clay. It's Alicia Cunha here. And you know, I've covered the campaign trail for a long time, and it's actually harder to get into a lot of President Trump's campaign events than it is into this hotel. Do you think that's a function of tradition? Because the Secret Service has been working this event for decades at the same place. And I'm just curious as maybe that got in the way, that, well, they've always done it this way, they've always done it here, and it's always worked. Is that possible?
I think that's a great question, and I think it builds on the larger context here. We saw in Butler, Pennsylvania. We saw in West Palm Beach when a guy was in the bushes beside President Trump's tee box waiting to kill him. And now we've seen in Washington, D.C. There are more attempts on President Trump's life, and that's where he's actually been physically present. Obviously, I'm sure there's many others than at any president in any of our lives. And of course, remember Ronald Reagan was shot outside of this same hotel back in 1981. We have to have the level of security that is not maybe great for Bill Clinton in 1995 or for George W. Bush in 2005. We've got to have Trump-level special security because, and I think this is the real truth that we need to talk about, Democrats have convinced a lot of their base that they need to kill President Trump because he's a Nazi. And if you truly believe that he's a Nazi, and if you read this guy's manifesto, it sounds like he believes it, then he thinks he is a hero. He has been motivated and driven, as was, I believe, the West Palm Beach shooter, and probably, although we still don't know a lot about him, the Butler, Pennsylvania shooter. Those guys thought they were heroes killing a modern-day Hitler, and that's a direct result of a decade of demonization that we've seen. Unfortunately, as I was laying on the ground, I thought, well, this is probably a left-wing loon. I believe all the evidence supports that I'm correct. And I also thought, this will not be the last time they try to kill President Trump. I wish that I could say that it was, but I feel like this is just going to happen again. I really do. And that's something that I think is a failure of the Democrat Party and something that they should be held accountable for because they're motivating people to engage in this behavior.
Clay Travis, you're not wrong about that. Thank you so much for taking the time tonight. We're happy that you are back in Nashville, Tennessee.
It's a shame, and we're going to have to do something about it.
Thank you, Tommy. Unfortunately, not the best date night. I've got to get a better one here for Laura.
All right, thanks so much, Clay.
Watch over and protect our president, regardless of what party he's from.
Special Agent James Gagliano joins us with his thoughts on the investigation as agents comb through the suspect's home.
To have you with us, would it be an overstatement to suggest this person was more or less a political vigilante in his belief that he was coming to somehow avenge his political grievances?
Well, Kev, I read the manifesto as you did, and it read like political vigilantism, and I've been using this term quite a bit in the last few months because we've seen case after case after case like this. assassination culture. And what is that? Somebody has a grievance. In this instance, it could have been us not supporting Ukraine the way that he felt we should have. You apply an ideology to that, and then you apply your own moral absolutism. And Kev, this has the classic makings of a disaffected, disenchanted, disenfranchised guy who believed that this was a way he was going to make the world right.
James, we don't have all the information. I have to preface this question with that. But with the information we have, I don't see anything from a novice point of view, someone that's just done, security background checks, things like that. I don't see anything that would have red flagged this guy right away. There's this one group that his sister says was involved in. We asked Nicole Parker last hour. She said she'd never even heard of him. We don't know how involved, even if he was, it's something his sister said. With that being said, it makes sense that he legally purchased firearms. I mean, there wasn't anything there to prohibit that. That's your Second Amendment right. I would imagine people will eventually talk about that. Maybe not, since he did it in California, and apparently they know the best of how to handle guns. At some point, it's not the fact that he was able to buy guns or buy a train ticket. It's that he was radicalized. And so what do you do proactively? I mean, the only other option there, I guess, is to become a surveillance state. You can't expect politicians to take accountability and tone down their rhetoric. That would be insane. So how can you proactively foresee things like this and prevent them?
Well, Joey, the simple answer to that is you can't. And look, you guys talked about this in an earlier block where you talked about the collision between First Amendment rights and keeping us safe. And look, if you allow me to establish martial law, I can keep everybody safe. But nobody in our country wants that. Exactly. So you have to find that middle ground there. But obviously when hate speech or when rhetoric, incendiary rhetoric, turns into action, that's the fine line where law enforcement has to try to identify these people and interdict them before something like this happened last night.
Yeah, it's a
Absolutely.
job for sure, especially with so many kooks out there online spouting so many hateful things. You love the First Amendment, but some of these things are definitely difficult to read. My question for you, James, is this. I want you to help us out in the news media, because there are a lot of these folks that they want to be known, they want to be martyrs. Maybe that's why they pen a manifesto. Maybe that's why they're online and they say the things that they say. And of course, as those that report the news and we want to give people all the information, we want to let you know everything about the suspect. We want to let you know his name and every little thing about him. But when you approach this as an FBI agent or a retired FBI agent, in terms of these people becoming martyrs, should we say his name? Should we try to eliminate his name when we talk about him? What's the best way that we can go about this so that we don't inspire others with a similar mentality to do something so sick and twisted?
Yeah, Tommy, I understand the sympathies that some people have that suggest you don't mention their names. I try to look at these things antiseptically, and that means I'm looking at this as a case and trying to prevent the next one. Look, bad guys, terrorists, people that are imbued with assassination culture, they're like water. They follow the path of least resistance. And he particularly chose this location because he felt like he could get as close to the president and the administration as possible. And look, if you are willing to die in the process, and how this young man was not killed, he should be on his knees thanking God every single day. He's going to spend the rest of his life in jail, but he narrowly avoided being killed there on scene.
Retired
Absolutely.
FBI Supervisory Special Agent James Gagliano. Great to have you, my friend. We really appreciate your input tonight. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Kev. Thanks.
talking to me in a job. Sorry, I keep. If you want to eat the whole thing, you can have it if you want it.
Oh no, half.
You want a little pudding? There you go. What you doing?
I'm doing right here for my Cincinnati Reds. Gonna have a ball, Cincinnati Bengals, and both of them, as well as the University of Kentucky and the University of Louisville and Northern Kentucky University and Xavier and all the other sporting events in our greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky area in the Commonwealth of Kentucky.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Heidi. Praise the Lord.